Thanks, everyone. My name is Lori Edelman. I'll be your facilitator today. Welcome to our webinar, Simplified Application Services to Dramatically Reduce Incident Resolution. EffectTech has partnered up with PuzzleLogic for our presentation today. Presenting will be Rick Chen, the Managing Principal at EffectTech. He's in a dual role. He's also the founder and CEO of PuzzleLogic. Marie Ryan will be joining us today. She is the Technical Marketing Manager for PuzzleLogic. Rick, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Lori, and thank you everyone for attending what we hope to be an insightful part 3 of our webinar series around IT service operations. So I will go into just a quick set of slides, and then we'll actually spend most of our time this webinar going into what we think is a very innovative IT service operations product to dramatically reduce incident resolution time for critical and complex applications. So before we get into that demo, what we want to do is cover 3 basic parts of the agenda in terms of what is service operations to ground everybody and what we view as service operations. And then talk about what we consider to be 3 easy steps to develop and mature your service operations capabilities within your organization. And finally, we'll spend the majority of this presentation with a demonstration of a new product that we're launching to market. It's called PuzzleLogic Service Advisor, and then that's when I turn over the reins to Marie, who will give you the demonstration. We'll wrap up with Q&A, and hopefully you'll find and really enjoy what you're about to see. So as a backdrop to what we're talking about, IT service operations, this is the ITIL description of what is IT service ops, but we actually believe that there is a missing ingredient within IT service operations as defined by ITIL. And the key missing ingredient for us is actually configuration management. And we're not talking about maybe what you view as your legacy configuration management from a set of legacy tools, but a lightweight, very agile config process from a DevOps standpoint. So when you look at the incident, problem, event, access, and request, which is the core components of IT service ops, we encourage you to actually view config as a missing piece to actually do that well, to do IT service operations well. You will need to actually do elements of config management to really enable the capability. And from there, we look at IT service operations as a journey. And when we talk about a journey, we talk about 2 main things. One is your application stack. So this is what we consider to be all the major components or objects, as you will, for an IT application. Whether you define applications at the service or the application level on the top. As an IT service ops person, you really have to take a look at the data, the runtime components, any middleware, certainly your OS, your virtualization, your host that your applications are running on, and finally your storage and networking. So that's a complete IT stack for an application, and it's divided up into 2 major areas: the development data, or the development components, and then the operations components. So from there, when you look at service ops, it's really combining and joining all of that information to process that data, to make it structured, to make it accessible, relevant, and timely. If you can do that effectively, you will have a very good chance at implementing IT service ops in your organization. What's happened is we see in today's world that a lot of this data is disjointed. There are islands of data. There are multiple tools that manage different stacks, parts of the stack. And that leads to those proverbial SWAT calls in the middle of the night where everybody's there to defend themselves. Is the servers working? Are the databases up? Is the networking fine? Are the servers running well? Are your Java memory heap utilization within reasonable means? When all those things start happening to try to troubleshoot an outage or partial outage within your application, and you guys know that very well. But we're here to tell you there's a better way to be able to combine that information, process it, and structure it in such a way that it's accessible, it's useful, it's relevant, and timely. That's part of the journey, and this is a very holistic discussion in terms of how to do IT service operations, regardless of whether you're looking at it from an ITSM lens, whether you're a VMC customer or a ServiceNow customer, or you're looking at it from an ops tool standpoint, a monitoring standpoint. To do this effectively, you need to combine elements of all that and combine the data around those different elements you see on the left to be able to do effective IT service operations. So we talk about 3 steps. So 3 steps to do successful IT service ops. It's really starting from our standpoint, looking at your critical applications and services. So one of the things we talked about in webinar 2 was, really looking at your services and applications from an operations standpoint, and operations versus business. And that's a very interesting set of discussions that I typically have been around. Where you look at your application and services, if you're driven from the business side, certainly looking at it from a financial perspective. When you look at services and applications and you put your ops hat on, the definition and how you build out your services or define your services or applications are potentially very different. And I used an example last time when you look at your claims. If you're an insurance provider and you're looking at your claims application, from an IT perspective, claims may be looking at it from, you have 2 instances running. You have one instance running on the East Coast. You may have a dev or backup or DR instance running on the web, on a different region. So you start defining those applications differently than if you're an executive. You're looking at claims as a big service that you provide. Very different structure. The components you build out, the instances that you define become very operational focused, but that provides you a better chance to do IT service operations and to shorten your incident resolution times much more effectively than taking a look at it from a business perspective. And when you define your applications or your major instances, you define how operations manages it. You also define it maybe from West Coast operations or versus East Coast operations, and you give that sense of to when things happen, who's impacted, who has to come to the rescue to resolve those issues. That may provide you a different lens as to how you define those applications or instances and then load them into what we consider to be a better IT ops solution. So in step 2, once you define that, we depending on your maturity, and you may have a very mature, for example, ServiceNow CMDB, but if you don't, to start with what we consider to be a very simple 2 or 3-tier application model. What I've highlighted here is a 3-tier application model. It starts out with services, then defines applications underneath that, and then the services or hosts that run those applications. If you do that, you'll be surprised how effective and how much improved your service ops can be in terms of knowing when a host event occurs, this file full error occurs, which applications and services are impacted. It becomes really easy. And we've been talking about this for a long time, by the way. This is not a new concept, but for me, it's very interesting that it's still very hard to do. Because we get caught up in a lot of discovery tool deployments, etc. But to do this basic type of IT 2-tier or 3-tier model, it becomes very effective. And we'll hopefully show that to you in a few minutes. So there are elements that you can start slightly differently. You may decide to go, Rick, I want to go to a different 3-tier model. That's fine. Or I want to pull in data and use the discovered data and then enrich that information with what the things you're talking about on the top, the services. But so there are a lot of ways to start, but to start more simply is the key and not get buried into all the discovered aspects, the modeling aspects, all that stuff that maybe you may be used to when you're looking at your service, your application model. But to start with a more simplified approach to be able to take advantage of that information, to make it useful, make it relevant, make it timely, you'd be surprised how far you can get with a 3-tier model. And then certainly you can let discovery tools fill in the detail. The discovery tools are really good at going to every IP address it finds within your data center, and then find out what's running on it, if it has the right credentials, and finding out what the dependencies, what hosts are communicating with other hosts. Those discovery tools are really good at doing that. And as you start this top-down model versus bottoms-up model, you can really easily enrich this and fill out the OS, the virtualization, the other runtime things that are running on your boxes. You'd be surprised how easy it is to do once you start with this basic model. And finally, when you talk about IT service ops and the successful the success formula, if you will, aggregating that data into a single consolidated system to gain that end-to-end visibility. And this is the secret sauce of if you do the preliminary steps and then you aggregate that information from your existing tools, whether they're monitoring tools, log tools, database monitoring systems, you name it, it becomes very easy to see and gain that end-to-end visibility. Processing that data, make sure you consider systems that handle the velocity, the variability, and the volume of that data. We know that if you get further down into your stack and start looking at your syslogs or your other monitoring logs, it becomes a lot of data. And you have to have systems and technologies in place, platforms in place that can handle the velocity, the variability, and the volume. Your typical NoSQL or big data sources based on Hadoop, those give you the fighting chance at handling this large amounts of data and processing it and to make it relevant and timely. You have to look at modern platforms to be able to do that. And as far as automating as much as possible the structure and accessibility of this, you want a system that gives that information to you so you don't have to do that work and process the data on your own or manually. You want to be able to have systems in place that automate that accessibility and relevancy of that data as much as possible. And that's where we're going to get into where we think a tool that we see out there developed by PuzzleLogic, this product, will be able to do that for you and handle much of that automated processing for you as much as possible. So, that is a quick overview. I wanted to get through this as quickly as possible, but this is part of the foundational principles, the 3 easy steps, the 3 basic steps to do successful IT service ops. If you do that and you aggregate that data into that single consolidated system, then when you have an incident or you have an anomaly happening within your applications, you will be able to see that end-to-end view and then troubleshoot more effectively than what we see customers do today. So that's really the prelude to a demonstration we're about to go through. A product is called Service Advisor. It's an incident investigation product. It empowers IT operations to quickly identify, troubleshoot, analyze, and ultimately resolve complex issues. And we hope that you'll be able to see that very effectively and very easily in the upcoming demo. So I am going to turn it over to my colleague Marie Ryan, and Laura, if there's any questions on chat or otherwise, please let me know, and we'll set Marie up.
Thanks, Rick. I do have a question from Ron. If we already have services in ServiceNow, do we have to reduce it?
No. So if you're talking about you have a pretty mature CMDB, a ServiceNow CMDB or Remedy CMDB, we actually have the ability to pull that data from your existing CMDB and all of its relationships, whether it's a very complex model. We actually have the ability to process that information, and you can preserve that data. We also have an ability to enrich and federate that data so that the data that you have, if it's not as complete, you have the ability in Service Advisor to enrich that data through a more, what we consider to be a more agile federated capabilities. So you may see that in the demo. If you do not, let us know, and we'll actually highlight that in some of the screenshots or some of the screens that we're showing.
Thanks, Rick. We don't have any additional questions. I think we're ready for Marie to start the demonstration.
Okay, thank you. I just want to verify you guys can see my screen. Do you see a screen with the Service Advisor open on it?
We do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So thanks, everybody. Thanks, Rick, for that introduction. I'm here today to talk to you about our Service Advisor product, which, as Rick said, is geared towards that Tier 2, Tier 3 application support person. So it allows you to define your applications in this tiered model that we're talking about and consolidate and aggregate data from multiple different data sources, including service management applications, different monitoring tools, different log summaries. And we're consolidating that information, and we'll see as we go through the demo how we're able to show you that and show you what's happening around your application and help you investigate potential upstream, downstream application dependencies to help you pinpoint problems that you may be having, finding the right person to help you with the problem, and overall reducing incident resolution time. So initially, when I log into the application, you see here that I have modeled out a bunch of different applications that your company may be supporting. The model here, as you see, it's not just for one type of app. It could be your finance apps, it could be healthcare apps, it could be apps like your ITSM, Remedy, ServiceNow, apps, etc. So there's a bunch of applications on here right now. A lot of them, as a user or as an IT specialist, I'm not going to be responsible for all of these. So I can go through and I can select just those ones that I am interested in looking at by just clicking on one of these little arrows up here, or the stars on the right hand side. And when I go to my applications panel, I see that just those apps that I am interested in monitoring will be displayed here for me. When I look at this screen, I see the tiles show me that a couple of these apps have this little red alert icon on them. So what this is indicating to me is that there's something happening in this application that I have flagged as being important to me. And as we go through the demonstration, we'll see how easy it is to customize what's important to you, because of course for every application, what's important to me may be different to what's important to you. I'm looking for specific things that are impacting my app, which are going to be different depending on the application that I'm supporting. The other thing we'll notice here is that the red icon is not around all of the apps, so that we do have a time range that we're looking at here. So by default, my time range when I open the app is just looking at what's going on in the last 2 hours. So I can see that my email and financial apps are having some issues in the last 2 hours. My other apps right now seem as though they're performing okay. I can change this slider, so if I want to extend the range, it's very simple just to go through and do that. When I change the slider, the app will go through and correlate the data for that given periods that I'm going to select. So if I, for instance, change it to the last 4 hours, maybe I'll slide it out a bit further. If I go to 8 hours, I start seeing that this other app down here now has some things that I have deemed as being important to me flagged on them. For the purpose of the demo, I'm going to walk through a very simple application that I have modeled in this simple three-tier model. And I'll show you how I have done that, how I've defined the application. And then later on we'll walk through how easy it is to configure and to set this up and to build a service, or to basically model out your own app. So by selecting on the application here, I'm going to select on my sample service application. And when I step into it, I get into my main summary page. So this is where I'm just getting a quick overview of what's going on in my app. I have a bunch of key statistics over here. I'm able to go through and very easily define new key statistic rules if I want to do that. I have a couple of inactive ones here. So for instance, currently I'm showing high and critical open incidents. I'm not showing what mediums that are there. So I can, if I open this one here, you'll see how easy it is to define it. I give it a name. I can select the criteria. Here it's basically I'm looking just for medium ones. Right now I'm looking for medium incidents that are coming from the Remedy trouble ticketing system that are open. Once I activate that key statistic and go back to my summary panel, I now see that I'm also getting stats based on this rule that I have defined. Defining the rules, I can also go through and I can do specific searches on it if I wanted to further limit. So I may want to see just medium tickets with specific keywords, so I can build stats based on that. My next panel over here is my important message panel, and this is where I define these rules for what's important to me, and this is what in turn will trigger that red coloring of the main application on my home panel. By default, out of the box, my important message rule is just defined to be any open, high, or critical tickets, and as we go through the demo, we'll show you how you can customize and change that so you can see the data reflected in your service model. So right now I'm going to jump across here to what we call our connections panel. And the connections panel is where I have built out this model of my application. So right now with my application, I have a very simple sample service, and I'm saying that my service has application servers, database servers, integration servers, mid-tier servers, web services servers. Under my application servers, I'm listing out the various different computer systems or hosts that are my application servers. So you can look at this and model out, you can think of any application that you support that you could probably fit into a simple model like this. It could be your mail app has different app servers and database servers, something like your Remedy or your ITSM app, same way you may have different application servers, mid-tier servers, web services servers. Right now, as you see, I've built out this. It's a simple model. It's a three-tier model. I'm able to very easily click on any of the boxes here to see what are the servers that are underneath that particular cluster for my database servers, for instance. The other thing that I see here on this panel is that I do see that I have this red icon besides some of these servers. So by opening this, I can see that right here, my sample host 37, which is one of my integration servers, there's something going on that in the time period that I have currently selected. And so this is something that I may want to go and look at because I have defined one of these rules to say, show me what's happening on each of the hosts within that comprise my overall application or business service. So right now, if I want to do this, I can go through and I can just select on this particular host. And by clicking update here, I go down and I see the messages or whether it's incidents, whether it's information coming from log files, coming from various different monitoring tools. I'll see that list of events down here in this bottom panel. And this is, I can use this for helping me troubleshoot and triage particular incident or particular issues that are going on. So before we dive more into this panel, I'm going to go back to my What's New panel that I skipped over because I wanted to give you just a basic overview of how I've built out my sample service. So when I go to my What's New panel, what this panel is doing is it's basically showing me this aggregation of data that Rick had mentioned and talked about earlier. So this is where for my particular sample service, in this panel I'm aggregating the data for all of the components that make up that application on this one panel here. I can expand out here to show where that data is coming from. So you see that I'm getting some information from Remedy, I'm getting some Logstash information, I may be getting some events from Nagios, Tivoli, etc. if they're there for this particular service or application. So what I see on this single panel, on my single pane of glass, is I'm getting that aggregate look as to what is going on around my application. On this panel, I'm able to do a lot of different filtering, sorting, and searching so that if I go through here, I can filter based on priority, I can filter based on source, based on where these messages are coming from if I just want to look for messages from one particular data source. I can filter based on status, or I can filter based on the type of event that's coming into me. So for instance, if I was looking at this data in something like my Remedy system, this would be the sort of data that I'm seeing. I'm seeing all these Remedy incidents that have been created with the timestamp, the created date, modified date, etc. on them. For this data that we're pulling across from some of the service management tools like Remedy or ServiceNow, we're pulling the ticket information so that we're not just we're showing you the summary data here, but we also are pulling the data based on what's the summary, what's the details, if there's any work notes associated with that ticket, who are the people that are supporting it. So we're pulling a lot of the supporting information from these third-party tools across here. As I'm saying, if I'm looking at this now as a triaging perspective, I'm seeing I'm getting a lot of incidents open on Remedy, but I don't get an overall view as to what really is happening around my Remedy application. Here I'm just getting all these incidents. So by going back here and by looking at all of the data, I start seeing that there's I'm getting a bunch of Logstash errors also coming into me that are from my sample service application. Excuse me. And so sometimes it's a lot of things that are being monitored by different logs or by different monitoring tools. People are seeing all of that information on different panels and they're not correlating that data. So by correlating it in this single pane of glass here, I get a better view as to what is going on. So right now I see that I have a medium ticket here that was open that users aren't able to access my application. But I can also see that my logging is showing me that I'm getting a bunch of SQL errors. I'm getting a bunch of blocked database. There's a long-running query running on my database. These two these set of events very likely could be related because once I start getting that long-running query on my database, my users may not be able to access my application because they're not able to access the database. So in this single pane of glass here, I'm able to get that better holistic view as to really what is happening on my application. And this can help me go through and triage the problems and get to problem resolution quicker.
Yeah, so I'd like to just add a couple of comments, Marie, and why we believe this moves the needle for an IT service operations team. So one of the things that we know is today there's a lot of alerts that are being generated by the various monitoring tools, whether it's your infrastructure monitoring tools, your database monitoring tools, you name it, you're getting bombarded with alerts and emails that are going off 24/7. So you have that happening, and that generates a lot of noise, right? But still, from our standpoint, depending on your maturity, IT operations teams, especially application support teams, are driven by the incidents that are being created by their ITSM ticketing systems. So that is their call to action to begin an investigation process of what's happening with my app. So that the noise that happens, you get used to that noise. You rely on your support teams, whether your database teams or your Unix teams or Windows teams, to address those issues that may not be seen by you as an app guy. So what we're seeing here is that, number one, when you do get that incident from the service desk, you now have the ability to see that correlated information of those different tools that are out there, to connect the dots, right, to see what's happening around that incident, around that time frame. You're having in this case, you're having some database issues, you're having some application server issues, so you're able to more easily pinpoint based on that incident being created. And the other thing that Marie showed in that connections view, if you go back to the connections view, if you go through this heat map dashboard of your applications, it's usually a sea of red. There's always something happening with my application. So that's that top view, right? So that's that first exclamation point. I have a problem with my sample app. And then if you go to the lowest level view of your monitoring tools are generating your alerts from your host, etc., this view, that three-tiered view, you, in a very easy 2-second view, you now see, I have a problem, something's happening with my service app. I now know I have a problem with my web services area and my integration. So really, you've already just correlated that data to that medium view that really says, okay, how important is it? Is it my integration server? Yes, that's important. Or my web services? It's not that important because I have 4 other hosts that are picking up traffic. I don't have to worry about it. I can go to lunch. This allows me to very easily see that view versus if it's a database server, I have what's going on in my database server. I can't go to lunch. I need to work on this right now. It's very easy to see that in that simple view for the non-techie, right? So we're trying to enable Tier 2 support people as well as Tier 3 support people, especially the Tier 2 guys. It's very easy to troubleshoot, to get a sense of what's happening, and then go to lunch or not, get you up or not. Those are the things we're trying to solve in the connections view. So hopefully you're seeing that. So Marie, go back to you.
Yeah, so thank you, Rick. So continue on there as Rick was saying, looking at my data that I had seen before. I saw that I was seeing some issues with my database server, so that I can quickly go through here. I see these SQL blocking errors coming out on this database server. And now in this view, I can go through and I'm able to figure out, again, who is the person to contact? Who do I contact to try and figure out what's going on with my database, to try and kill some of these long-running queries so that I can get access back to that database and my users will not be blocked. Again, here, this one was not flagged red for my Microsoft SQL errors because it's just coming into me as a medium priority event. But this is where I can build out these rules so that if this is something that's critical to me and I'm seeing that we're getting a lot of these long-running queries on my database, I can very easily go back and I can create what we call this important message rule. And if I open this rule, all I'm looking for is I'm looking for the keyword for MS SQL error block. I see that that's what's coming in my log event to me. If I activate this rule here, go back to my summary, I now see that some of these log events are now coming up as my important messages. And more importantly, when I go back to my connection view, I now see here that my database servers has been highlighted in red to indicate to me that something is happening in my database servers. I go through, I see host 61, this is the server I was having that issue with. So now this has gotten triggered, it's gotten highlighted for me so I can be more proactive. If I define this rule based on what I feel is important to me and what's impacting my service, or what is something that I'm continuously finding kind of after the fact, I end up getting the ticket opened at my help desk. I get a high ticket open that nobody can access the application. It ends up it's a problem with the database. So by creating some of these rules and saying I want to be notified when I'm getting some of these long-running queries so I can go through and figure out what's going on before that event gets raised to the help desk people. So with this, there is that ability of preventing incidents from being opened and resolving them quicker. So once again, in this screen with our connections view, as we said, what we're seeing is that view of how we have built out this model of our application, how we have defined our application in this three-tiered model, and how we're able to view and aggregate that data. The other one thing I want to point out here is that a lot of times you build out your sample application or sample service, and that service or application may have dependencies on other applications, and it's not always very easy. You don't have visibility as an IT person. You don't have visibility into what's going on in somebody else's app. So we have the ability here to define what we call a traverse point or an application dependency point. And so right now with my sample service, I see that it's dependent on authentication. So in order for my service to be working, the authentication service needs to be up and running. If people aren't able to log in and authenticate, they're not going to be able to log into my app. So there could be a problem, excuse me, going on with the authentication application that I'm not aware of. I have no visibility into it. So by defining your model and by defining these cross-application points, I'm able to very quickly see again what is happening in the authentication service space. I can go through and I can just select just these apps here, which are my what's happening in the authentication side of the world. I can see what are the main issues that are happening over here, what are the critical issues that are going on. And in addition to that, I can correlate information from both services. So by selecting any of the items on my left panel and doing an update, what I'll get below now is I'm getting the data basically from both of the services correlated in this pane of glass below. And once again, on this pane, like what we could do on the other panel that we looked at, we're able to go through, we're able to filter those messages, we're able to search on the messages. So now at this stage, I'm actually searching on messages, on whether it's log events, on monitoring events that are coming into me, on incidents that are coming into me. I can go through and I can do a search, and the search is going to search across all of that data across the multiple different services. So you see below here, it's getting data from incidents, from logging events, and it would be getting it from the different business services. So that's what we call our traverse, our inter-application dependency, how we can view that and model that out. So with that, I think that kind of does an overview of the base part of the product, and I suppose the next question is asking us, how do I build out these applications? So I'm going to take a break here and ask Laurie if there's any questions from anybody on what we've shown so far before I get on to the second part of the demonstration, which is where I'll show you how you can easily build out one of these services.
Thanks, Marie. This is for Rick. I do have a question from David. For a full suite ServiceNow customer, does Service Advisor fit between service mapping and ITOM event management, or is it more of a complement to these?
We view it as a complement. So if you have the entire suite of IT service management products from ServiceNow, where you're doing the incident, you may do Service Watch for your service mapping. One of the things that we like to say is, that covers the incident portion, but the actual, the creation of the ticket, the assignment of the ticket. So once the assignment of the ticket happens, and you now need to go into the incident investigation mode, you're going to set the ticket, your incident ticket in ServiceNow to assigned or work in progress. And that work in progress is, I'm now looking at the root cause or the resolution of the incident. We view that you then go to Service Advisor, David, to then see that aggregated set of information, certainly coming from your ServiceNow ticketing systems, your ServiceNow databases. This view can be created from the data that is in your CMDB. But then the other data, your monitoring data or your log data, things that you may not be sending to ServiceNow, it's in your operational areas, your operational tool sets. To aggregate that to make it more relevant and timely in a single workspace, that's where we see that this is a complementary nature of what you have in place. And finally, you may want to close the incident or resolve it. You may want to reassign it. As part of our integration to ServiceNow, you would just click on the incident number. It'll launch into ServiceNow. You can resolve it and finish out the incident process. But that large step of incident investigation work in progress, what's happening there, you're not working in your ServiceNow ticket at that point, David. Your teams are not. They're actually going to whatever tools of today you're doing to do that investigation. And that's where we think that Service Advisor is complementary to your ServiceNow incident and Service Watch products. Hopefully that answers your question. If you want to do a follow-on chat, please let me know, and I'll try to offer any clarity to that response.
David says thank you, and Marie will go ahead and have you continue with the building of a simple model.
Okay, thank you, Laurie. So one of the things we do get asked when we're with the product is basically, like, a lot of companies, they're immature with building out their service models, and the question is, so, like, how can I do this? How easy is it to do this? So we do have, if you do have a service model already built out in CMDB, in either Remedy, Atrium CMDB, or ServiceNow CMDB, we can consume that data. We consume your service model the way you had it built out. But we do find a lot of customers, they're not mature in that side of things. They're not building out these two Tier 2, Tier 3 service models. So we will show you here how quickly and easy it is to add a service, an application or a business service. So right now I'm going to go through and I'm just going to add a sample service called my sales application. As you see, when I add the object, I picked the type of object to be a service. I can go through, I can type in, basically I'm going to fill in information here about my service. So it's like, this is my sales service. The status of it is going to be active. I can categorize it. I can add the various different data here for its production. Within our model here, we have, for our service application, we have defined a set of core fields that you can fill out. If there's specific fields that are important to you that you want to track for your service object, you can add custom fields down here. So if I wanted to add my own custom field, custom data, and the field type, like, we have a variety of different field types that you can select from here. So by just doing this, I'm basically creating one of these icons or tiles on my home screen here. So now I have my my sales service basically built up. When I go into my connections view right now, I see I just have a sales icon and nothing else here. So what I need to do is, of course, I need to build out my model. So this is where I'm able to go through, and to my sales service, I'm going to add some applications. So here I can go through and I can say I want to add an application. My application is, for instance, it's going to be point of sales. Again, I'm going to add in some data here. This is my, let's put in here, my abbreviated name is POS. This is point of sales. Once again, the status, active, environment, same sort of stuff. We can add the fields that we've defined for our application. My support lead right now is Marie. I can put in whatever the install date is going to be today. Let's put in whatever. Today's the 27th, right? I'm losing track of my days. And so I'm installing it today at, what time is it now? 9 a.m. And once again, I can add custom fields here. So this is how I can now add my point of sales application. Let me add a second application here that I'm going to call my sales analytics. Once again, test, and we'll go through just putting in a few values here. The only value that I need to define by default here is the name of my application. A lot of these other fields, they're not required by default. I can go back at any stage later. Once I've created these applications, I can always go back and I can edit it, so I can add these fields later on or add custom fields as I desire as I go along. So this shows you right now how I've just built two very quick points here within my service model, point of sales and sales analytics. So now what I'm going to do is I want to actually add my set of computer systems, my hosts, underneath both of these. So we saw just there how I was able to just build the simple apps as I went through. So now when I go into my sales analytics, I also have the ability to import data, and I can import it from a CSV file. So for this one, I have a file created already, which I have a bunch of hosts in. Let me just go in here. Okay, so I'm going to just import this file. So this is a CSV file. The format is very simple. It's got a bunch of headers. I've selected here, my first row is headers. And down here, if I just select the show data, I can see the data that's in my CSV file. So now what I do here is I'm going to map that data to the source fields, excuse me, from my host definitions within the Service Advisor. So as I go down here, I'll just be able to quickly go through and map each of these values. Once again, if I don't map, or if there's a value that I don't have within my own definition, it will get imported as one of these custom fields, so that if you've got some specific fields that you're tracking that we have not defined as part of our base object, you're still able to go through and import those fields and have them available to be searched on, to be used as part of your model. So as I go down here, let me just fill out a few more of these fields. Operating system, I know I have one for that down here. Comments, we're going to put this just into the other info. And I see right here still that I have, my next button has not yet been highlighted, because one of the things is that when I look here at the fields, I do have a required field, which is the source, which is basically telling me where that data is coming from. So I also have the ability to add extra fields. So here what I can do is for some of the fields that are within my object, I can either go through and add specific default values to them. So for instance, I'm going to add, my source is going to be PuzzleLogic registry objects. I could go through as well and say I'm going to add a class field here, and my class field I'm going to just put in a host class for all of my objects that I'm bringing in. So this is how, again, I can either define default values for some of the fields that Service Advisor is requiring, or as we said, we can map those fields across. By selecting next here, I'll go through, I'll do my import. It tells me the import was successful. Now when I look at my screen, I see here that all of these objects that I had defined in my spreadsheet have been imported into the Service Advisor. Within this panel here, I'm able to see, once again, I can see the fields were all bought in and matched. I can edit this data. I can add additional attributes as needed. I see my custom fields were bought in down here below. These were ones that I didn't map earlier on. Within this panel, I also can go through and I'm able to filter data. I'm able to filter it by the type of data that I've got in here, by the status of it, or by the source where the data has actually come from. And I can also search. So if I've got a very complex application and I want to search for a particular host name within it, I can enter the search up here and the items will show up below. So for instance, if I do a search for ATLPAP, whatever, 309, it just will pop up with this object here for me. So now when I look at the connections view for this, I see my sales analytics now has been populated. It's got this tiered model that it's got the computer systems under the sales analytics. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to do the same function for my point of sales application and quickly load in, import a file for this guy. So very similar to what I just did before, and we'll go through and once again we're going to match the fields with the names, host name, descriptions, alias, IP address. Let's go down and do environment. Status.
While Marie's talking, no data is the same, and that's one of the things that we hope you can actually see and highlight in this demonstration portion, is the fact that we talk about this notion of federated CMDB. Your main source of data may be coming from your ServiceNow CMDB or your HM CMDB, and those are what we define as those core fields. But no team has really the same set of attributes that they care about. So one of the things you may have seen here is this is a point of sale system, so store numbers are really important where this host, which store it resides. Well, what was easily seen that Marie just blew through was the fact that now we actually, without even mapping that attribute from that source CSV file, we're actually pulling in those unique federated attributes, and here you have something called store number. And that was automatically loaded into this big data repository, this big data IT ops repository. So in that world, you have your main data coming from your CMDB, but each application team is now owning and is responsible for that federated data that is unique and important to them. That happens automatically with this building out of this three-tier model. So that's, we think, is actually very important to be able to keep track of what you have, what's important to you for your given application, keep track of the attributes from a config perspective, and then from an assignment or from a troubleshooting perspective, it's much easier to track. And here's where you have this registry of important CIs, or what we call objects, in Service Advisor. So hopefully that, if you have any questions, please chat it. But we think that's that when we talk about, doing better IT service ops in that config portion that I added in that introductory slide, this is what we mean by having that light, very agile config process to track important attributes for your given application. So Marie, back to you.
Okay, thanks, Rick. So as you see, as we said, we've just imported the hosts that are part of my point of sales app. So now if I go back to my main panel here, and I should just actually mark my sales app here as been one of my ones that I'm interested in, so that now as I go to my apps page, it will show up here for me. When I now drill into my sales app and go to my connections panel, so now I see that my sales app is comprised of my two applications, that my sales service, I should say, is comprised of my two applications, my point of sales app and my sales analytical app. And under each of these, I see that I've now built my three-tier structure. So now I have, in this case, I've got service, I've got application, and I've got hosts. As we said, going back to my registry page here, now at this stage and this panel, I'm seeing all of the items that make up my sales app. So you see, I see my two applications and all of the hosts. So I'm seeing the hosts below here from both my point of sales and my sales analytics. Right now, when I go back to my what's new page or my summary page, I see that currently I don't have any data. I've just built out this model of my sales application. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to inject some data into the system. I'm going to inject a few events. So you can see that if you've built out your application and now you connect it up to either your service management application or your monitoring logs, and you want to send some of those logs to some of these specific CIs that you've created, now when I go into my What's New panel, I see that I've started getting some of these events and incidents sent into me. So at this case, all I need to do is when I'm sending an event or incident into my Service Advisor system, I just need to identify what is that CI, what is the item that this event is associated or attached to. So when I go to my Connections panel now, and if I select on either of these, or I can select on both of them, and below I see all the messages that have come in for both sides. If I just select on my point of sales one, again, some of these messages will go away. These are the ones that are associated with my point of sales. The one thing here we see is that we don't have any of these that are flagged as highlighted as red, because I've entered them into the system just now as being a low priority. As we talked about earlier, we can define these important message rules which will trigger the alerts to notify me when things are going wrong. So I may be saying, oh, I'm getting this critical heap space error here on this particular system. And I know with critical heap error, that means it's indicative of my system is potentially going to be running low on memory. So by getting this event sent to me, I can take that proactive or preemptive action. And when I see that happening, it may be that I want to be triggered. I want to be notified. I want one of these important message alerts to let me know I'm running low on space here, so that I can actually contact the person to potentially go through and reboot that system ahead of time. So that is as easy as going back. Here I've got a rule already set up for this, just looking for that text of critical heap space, critical heap free. By activating that rule, going back here to my summary, I now see that this event has now been deemed as an important message to me. And by looking at my connections panel, I can look at my point of sales application. I see it's been triggered as red, so I know something is going on in that. I scroll down here and I can see, oh, the issue is with this box, my PAP 277 host. So now I'm able to go through, and if I had set up my owned and supported by this information, I didn't populate when I was populating my CI info, but if I had set up the owner and the supported by information, I can quickly see who is the person that's responsible for this application, be able to contact them, tell them, oh, we're having issues with heap space on your box. Can you please go through and see what's going on and potentially reboot the machine before it ends up becoming a critical issue where people are not able to access the business service or the application. That concludes this portion of the demo, Laurie. If there's any other questions from anybody out there, I'd be more than willing to answer them, or Rick or I can answer whatever questions you have. I hope this shows you how easy it is to define these 2- and 3-tier models of your application within Service Advisor and see that consolidated view of your data.
Great, Marie. I do have 2 questions for Rick, and I know you're going to pass it back to Rick for just one final closing slide. Rick, we have a question from Linda. Can I create my CIs in Service Advisor and then reconcile those with my CMDB? Is the first one?
Yeah. So if you have an existing CMDB and it's being populated by discovery tools, right? So it's very easy for Service Advisor to pull that data on a once a day, once an hour, depending on how frequent you want to do it. It's very easy for us to pull the data. So we have a very open set of integration APIs to be able to extract the data out of your existing CMDB and populate these core objects in the core fields. So yes, you can do that. And then if it's incomplete, you can do exactly what Maria shown you. So you may have, if you're, assume your CMDB is 90% complete and there's a 10% gap. You can add custom fields in Service Advisor to track additional attributes, or you can add missing hosts or other devices to fill that out. And you can actually build out a richer, more mature reconciliation process so that the data is being populated and refreshed from your CMDB every day, every hour. Now, there is one caveat to that. So if your users in Service Advisor, we take a very open approach, and from a permission standpoint, that if you want to change the status or an IP value or a memory value, if you from X to Y, from 24 gigabytes to 32, if your CMDB says it's 24, it'll overwrite your 32 gigabytes that you've entered. So that type of reconciliation and controlling down to that attributes, you do have a possibility of overwriting one another. But we do suggest as best practice, let your CMDB, if you have one, populate your core attributes, and then your custom attributes that you saw could be managed and maintained by your app teams or your infrastructure teams. Hopefully that answers that question, and any follow-on, let me know.
Okay. And then we're just about ready to wrap up here, but Arturo is asking, how long does it take to stand up and configure?
So to stand up Service Advisor is, typically it's on-premise system. It will take anywhere from 2 weeks or so, 2 weeks to 3 weeks to go through your provisioning processes. But to install the software itself, once those servers are configured properly, it's really a day or two-day max. And then you can then take advantage of what you just showed, what Marie just showed, to be able to build out or integrate to your CMDB, build out your service models. And it's also very easy to start sending operational data into Service Advisor. We have an open API. We have a command line interface where you can it's a scripting interface. You can run it and start sending data in. It's 4 parameters you pass in through this command line, and you can take advantage of what you saw in the demonstration. So literally, you can be up and running and starting seeing value within a couple of weeks, from the time of go to provisioning your servers to begin seeing the value of this aggregated, relevant, timely, accessible data from your different parts of your infrastructure.
Great. We have just a couple of other questions that I'm able to quickly respond back to via chat. So Rick, that's all the questions we have in queue for you.
Okay, so what did we cover today? We spent a quick time in terms of understanding what is IT service ops and the major elements of service ops, and why it's actually an elusive goal, right? To be able to see the data that's being produced by your systems, aggregate it, see it in a relevant, timely, accessible way. So that's holistically, that's the pieces that are missing to have you do from being a reactive IT organization to what we consider to be a very proactive, maturing IT service ops organization. And to be an IT service ops organization, you do need to have this simplified, at least a simplified application model. We understand your infrastructure components and what applications that they support, and be able to model out in a very simple way, very quick way, to be able to understand how your application components and your infrastructure components are connected. And once you do step 1 and step 2, which we hope we showed you how easy it is to define your applications, and then begin injecting and sending operational data into this product called Service Advisor, we actually now get the visibility that we're lacking today. You know, in one story we have to show you or tell you, we've been to multiple customers that say, you know, Rick, we don't know what's connected to what, number one, and all that data that's being generated being sent out to various operations teams, and we as an application support organization just don't have visibility to that data. That's a constant theme that we're hearing over and over and over again. So we hope what we showed you and we demonstrated to you today how easy it is to find your objects or your CIs in Service Advisor, start correlating your data, and get that visibility that you're lacking today, that you can actually see that and become, create these rules, see these statistics, and be able to troubleshoot incidents that occur and to really cut your incident resolution time, what we think, in half. So that's the ultimate net of the demonstration. We hope that you see the possibility of us exploring next steps with you all to be able to bring this new capable product into your organization. So Lori, thank you. Thank you for everyone to attend this meeting. And any last questions, please let us know before we adjourn.
Great, thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed Simplified Application Services and can see how they can dramatically reduce your incident resolution. Have a great day.